After seducing my husband, Brent Westwood, for 3 years and still being left untouched, I finally made up my mind. I was going to divorce him. I leaned back on the velvet chair in our bedroom, phone pressed to my ear. My voice was calm, but inside I was shaking. Not with fear, with relief. I'm divorcing him, I said flatly. I'll come home soon. On the other end, my brother's laugh rang loud and sharp. About damn time, Layla. Come to Switzerland. I've already lined up a bunch of guys for you. Real men. Not like that emotionally constipated mannequin you married. Lucas, he sighed. I warned you from the start, he said, ignoring me. You can't tame someone like Brent. He'd rather whisper sweet nothings to a wall than touch a woman. You deserve better. Always have. I thought I could make him fall for me, I murmured. I was wrong. I hung up before Lucas could say more. My fingers trembled as I dropped the phone onto the bed. That's when the memories came crashing in. The first time I saw Brent, at a Westwood gala, he stood in a corner, perfectly still, like a statue carved from marble. Men nodded with respect. Women stared with hunger. But he didn't return anyone's gaze. Not even mine. My brother introduced me that night. Brent barely nodded. I smiled. He looked through me. Still, I was drawn to him, obsessed even. I told myself I could be the one to break through that wall of ice. So I tried. Subtle touches, long stares, late-night texts, silk dresses, fake laughter, honest affection. All of it, I gave to Brent. And I waited. 3 years later, he came to me. No ring. No speech. Just walked up one afternoon and said, "Let's get married." I agreed without hesitation. I was foolish enough to think that meant he had finally fallen for me. But after the wedding, Brent never came to our bedroom. Not once. For months, I tried everything to pull him in. Silk lingerie in his favorite color, slipping into his study at night just to bring him coffee in nothing but a robe. I memorized his schedule, cooked him breakfast every morning, massaged his shoulders after long meetings, hoping he'd just look at me the way a husband should. I'd light candles in our room, put on soft music, pretend to fall asleep in suggestive positions hoping he'd reach for me. I even booked a weekend trip to the Maldives, thinking maybe a change of scenery would stir something in him. But he barely touched me. He didn't even notice when I cried in the shower, or how I stopped wearing perfume because he never cared to smell it. Each time he walked past me like I wasn't there, something inside me wilted a little more. Then one night, I broke his only rule. There was a door in the west wing. Always locked. Always off limits. Never go in there, he said. But I did. The room was dim, cold. The faint scent of perfume clung to the air. Not mine. That's when I saw him. Brent. Sitting in a velvet armchair, shirt half unbuttoned, trousers unzipped. One hand moving between his pants. The other held a photograph. Celeste. His stepsister. His eyes were glassy, fixated. His lips parted in a shaky breath. Celeste, he moaned softly, voice raw and needful. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared. It wasn't that Brent lacked desire. He just didn't desire me. I left quietly and slept in the guest room that night. No tears. Just silence. At dawn I rose, showered, dressed and walked out of the house. I just left to get fresh air, and to prepare all the things I needed to leave him. While I was having coffee, staring at the calm sea, he called. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another call. Then a text. Brent. Where's my Navy suit? I have a meeting. You didn't prep it. Where are you? This time, I picked up the call. Layla, Brent said curtly, already annoyed. Where is my damn suit? I exhaled slowly, then calmly said, I don't know. I don't care. There was silence on the line. What? He asked, voice tightening. Are you having tantrums again? Not now. I'm busy, so I need the damn suit. I said I don't care. Why don't you ask your stepsister? I said, my tone light but deadly. Since you only care for her. Then I ended the call. Brent left me missed calls and texts, but I didn't bother to read them all. I drove straight to the embassy after having my coffee. My entire family was already in Switzerland. My cousins, my aunts, and most importantly, Lucas. My brother. The only one who truly gave a damn about me. And me? I stayed here all this time. For Brent. For a man who wouldn't even touch me. I submitted the paperwork, sat through the dull conversations with officials, smiled politely, nodded when they told me processing would take a few days. Then I walked out into the California sun and didn't feel a thing. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my friends. There was an open beach bar I used to love. Loud music. Wild energy. Fire dancers and tequila shots. I used to live for it. But the moment I married Brent, I killed that part of myself. I stopped being the life of the party and started being a wife who slept alone. Not tonight. 2 of my friends, Tasha and Myra, were down immediately. Layla. Myra blinked when I stepped out of my car. That dress is see-through. It's bold, Tasha added, mouth open. Are you sure about wearing that? What about your husband? I smiled. I'm tired. Of pretending. Of waiting. I want to feel alive again, and I don't care about that man anymore. I headed straight for the music. The lights pulsed over my skin. I let the beat wrap around my hips and moved like I used to, uninhibited, loud, unapologetic. Men surrounded me in minutes. Hands grazed my waist. Chests brushed my back. Skin against skin. I laughed like it didn't matter. Because it didn't. Not anymore. Then someone grabbed my arm. "Layla," Myra hissed, dragging me toward the bar. "You need to stop." "Why?" I laughed. "Is there a rule I don't know about?" She looked over my shoulder. "Because Brent is here." My whole body went still. "What?" Tasha pointed. "He's been here since you walked in. Sitting there near the bar counter. He hasn't taken his eyes off you." I turned. And there he was. Brent. Leaning back against a bench. Drink untouched. Face unreadable. But he wasn't looking at me. His gaze was locked on someone else. I followed it. Celeste. His stepsister. She was laughing, flipping her hair, whispering in some guy's ear. Her hand casually slipped a card into his pocket. Brent stood up the second he saw it. He crossed the sand in long, angry strides. His hand wrapped around Celeste's wrist before the guy could even blink. I moved closer, heart pounding. Close enough to hear. "What are you doing?" Celeste snapped. "I was just talking with him, and why are you even here? Did you follow me?" Brent's voice was low and sharp. "Who gave you permission to talk and flirt with that guy?" Celeste yanked her arm free. "I'm not a baby. And since when do you care? You married that girl and disappeared. You didn't check on me. You didn't visit. You chose her, so stop pretending that you care." Brent's jaw clenched. "That's not true," he said, his voice strained. "You think I didn't care?" "I did, Celeste." "Stop." Her eyes glistened, voice sharp. "If that were true, you wouldn't have left me. You wouldn't have married her." "I had to," he replied. "I have a wife now. Things, they can't be the same anymore." Celeste's face twisted. Pain bloomed across her features, contorting into something darker, unrecognizable. "So I was right. It was all because of her. She's the reason you stopped looking at me. She ruined everything." Brent took a step back. "Celeste." "No," she spat. Her gaze snapped toward me. "If she didn't exist, you'd still be mine." My breath caught. Something in her eyes shifted. A snap. A flicker of madness. "She needs to die." Then it happened. In one smooth, terrifying motion, Celeste lunged. I barely saw her reach for it. A kitchen knife from the bar counter, tucked next to a basket of sliced limes and lemons. Steel flashed. Before I could react, before I could scream, she was on me. The blade sank into my side. White-hot pain exploded through my body, sharp and consuming. Gasps echoed around us. A glass shattered. I stumbled backward, clutching the wound. Blood already soaking through my dress. Then everything went dark. I woke up to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the hum of machines. The ceiling above me was too white, too bright. My body ached, my side throbbed, and every breath stung. "Layla." Myra's voice cracked as she leaned over me, her eyes wide and teary. "Oh my God, you're awake, thank God. We thought we lost you." Tasha stood behind her, clutching a cup of hospital coffee. She looked pale. "You lost a lot of blood. The knife cut deep, but no major organs were hit. The doctors stitched you up in time." My head was heavy, but my mind was clear. I blinked slowly. "Where's Brent?" Their silence was loud. Myra looked down. Tasha shifted uncomfortably. "Where is he?" I repeated, a little stronger this time. Myra finally spoke. "He didn't come." I stared at her. "What?" "He's went with Celeste," Tasha said, voice flat. "Right after you passed out. Paramedics came, took you. He stayed behind with her." "Stayed," I croaked. "He took her home," Myra added, anger slipping into her voice. "And we thought maybe he just needed to process or something, but then this." She pulled out her phone and turned the screen to me. It was a photo. Brent and Celeste, sitting at an outdoor restaurant. She was laughing. He was feeding her something from his plate, his hand on hers. There was a shopping bag beside her chair. "Designer." "They reconciled," Tasha said bitterly. "Brent spoiled her like nothing happened. We saw them ourselves." The photo blurred as my eyes welled up. I bit the inside of my cheek hard, grounding myself. I stared at the picture again. Celeste was smiling like she hadn't stabbed me just hours ago. Brent looked content. I knew what I needed to do. "Pass me my phone," I said. Myra hesitated. "Layla." "Please." She handed it over. I called the police. I gave them my full name, the hospital address, and filed an assault case. I told them what happened, that Celeste Westwood stabbed me with a kitchen knife at the bar, that it was unprovoked, that I had witnesses, that I had nearly died. By the time I ended the call, my hand was shaking, but my voice was steady. Later that night, the hospital room was quiet again. Myra and Tasha had gone home to rest. Nurses came and went. I stared at the 4-drip, the slow tick of saline, and the dull beep of the heart monitor. The door creaked open. "Brent." He stepped inside with his usual perfect posture, his face unreadable. For one moment, one pathetic heartbeat, I hoped he'd say he was sorry, that he'd ask if I was okay, that something had changed. He didn't. Instead, his jaw was tight, his voice low and controlled. You filed a case against Celeste? I blinked at him. She stabbed me. She didn't mean it, he said sharply. She was drunk. She wasn't in the right mind. You know how she is, she has a temper. She stabbed me, Brent. He looked at me like I was the problem. You're alive. You weren't critically hurt. It could have been worse. I laughed, a bitter, hoarse sound. That's your response? I could have died. She didn't want to kill you, he snapped. She was upset. My body stiffened. I am your wife. He exhaled slowly. Even if you file a case, it won't go anywhere. You know who our family is. I already grounded her. Took her cards. She won't be going out for a while. A credit card is not a punishment for attempted murder, I spat. Brent ran a hand through his hair. Layla, don't make this harder than it is. You need to rest. Heal. I tried to speak again, but he cut me off. I'm going abroad, he said, glancing at his watch. I'll be gone for a few days. When I get back, I'll bring you something. A gift. You'll feel better. Then he turned and walked out. Just like that. He never asked how I felt. Never said sorry. Never cared. I lay in that cold hospital bed, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. There was no warmth left. No hope. Only the sharp, painful clarity that Brent Westwood never loved me, and never would. I spent the next few days in the hospital, hooked up to wires and machines that beeped at regular intervals. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Blank. Numb. But when I couldn't take the silence anymore, I reached for my phone. Notifications blinked to life. Celeste had posted. Her Instagram was flooded. Photos of luxury shopping bags, reels of her sipping champagne on a private jet. The caption. Flying out for something special #royal auction #Princess Diana. I blinked, stunned. The next video showed her standing in front of a glass case, dramatically clutching her chest as an auctioneer described a brooch once worn by Princess Diana. Behind her? Brent. I watched the clip again. Brent. With Celeste. At a royal auction. Smiling. Whispering something that made her laugh like they were the only people in the world. Meanwhile, I was lying in a hospital bed with stitches down my side, and a pulse monitor beeping beside me like a ticking reminder of everything I had lost. Another post. This time, a photo of the two of them holding hands, not romantically, but intimate nonetheless. The caption burned. My brother is the kindest man alive. Some people could never understand our bond. You protect me. Always. #grateful #family first. My jaw tightened. I had chosen Brent over everything. My freedom, my friends, even myself. I had stayed loyal, patient, hopeful. And now, he was giving all of himself to Celeste, while I rotted in silence. Still, I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them that. I only needed my visa. Once it came through, I'd be gone. Out of this marriage. Out of their twisted lives. A few days later, I was discharged. To my surprise, Brent picked me up. Celeste was already in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, voice loud and chipper. Oh my God, Layla, you should have seen it. The auction was to die for. There were so many exclusive pieces. But that brooch, ugh, perfection. Brent almost got into a bidding war just for me. My stomach twisted. Brent handed me a small plastic bag as I slid into the passenger seat. Inside was a keychain. Cheap. Souvenir type. One of those airport ones with Zurich written across a tin plate. I thought you liked collecting these, he said without looking at me. I stared at it. He had just bought Celeste an antique brooch worth tens of thousands. And I got a keychain. I didn't respond. I didn't even fake a smile. The rest of the ride was quiet, except for Celeste, who kept chattering about her plans to redesign Diana's gown for her final school project. Brent's going to help me get a studio, she added smugly. Isn't that sweet? When we pulled into the driveway, Brent turned to me casually. Celeste will be staying with us for a few days. I said nothing, just got out of the car and walked straight to my room. The second the door closed, I collapsed on the bed and shut my eyes. I didn't want to feel. I just wanted sleep. But when I woke up a few hours later, something felt off. My head was lighter. My scalp was cold. I bolted to the mirror and screamed. My hair, my long, dark, carefully grown hair, was gone. Chopped in jagged pieces. Uneven. Butchered. Heart pounding. I stumbled out of my room, down the stairs, searching for answers. And there she was. Celeste in the living room, surrounded by strands of hair, my hair, draped over mannequin heads. She was stitching them into a wig. For school, she said cheerfully, barely glancing up. Real hair wigs are expensive. Thought I'd try something organic. Yours is perfect, so thick, so glossy. I snapped. The rage I'd buried all this time surged to the surface like a tidal wave. I marched forward and slapped her across the face. Her hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, And then, like a mask peeling off, her expression shifted into something darker. Brent has never laid a hand on me, she whispered. I've been protected all my life. No one touches me. How dare you? She stepped back, heels clicking against the marble. Then, slowly and deliberately, she pulled out her phone. I'm gonna make you pay for it. Before I could process her words, the front doors opened. 2 massive bodyguards in black suits stepped inside. I didn't even know Brent kept them stationed at the house. She ordered, hold her. What? Wait, stop. I backed up, but the guards closed in fast. One grabbed my left arm. The other snatched my right. Their grips were tight, brutal, unyielding. I couldn't move. I am Brent's wife. You don't dare hurt me. Celeste laughed. I'm his stepsister. And I'm pretty sure I'm more valuable than you are. The bodyguard hesitated a bit, but when they followed Celeste's order, I knew that even the bodyguards knew that Celeste was more important than me. Celeste stood in front of me now, arms crossed, her lip curled in disgust. You thought one slap would settle things? She said, tilting her head. You humiliated me. Her hand shot out. Slap. The impact exploded across my cheek, sending a jolt of heat and pain through my skull. My head snapped to the side. Slap. The other cheek this time. My jaw cracked. My ears rang. She hit again. And again. Her palm kept flying, switching sides, the sound of flesh meeting flesh echoing like gunshots. I lost count quickly. My skin burned. Then it broke. Blood trickled down my chin, and tears sprang to my eyes, not from emotion but from sheer, sharp pain. Still think you're better than me? She hissed between strikes. Still think you can walk around like this is your house? You're nothing, Layla. You were always nothing. My knees gave out, but the guards held me upright, forcing me to take it all. My vision blurred, dark around the edges. Her face became a smear of rage, her voice a buzzing hum behind the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. By the time she stepped back, I was breathless and broken. My face throbbed like fire. My lips were split, swelling already. She turned to the guards and casually asked, How many? 100, Miss Westwood, one of them said without hesitation. She smirked. Good. That's what happens when you lay a finger on me. No one touches me. I was still wheezing, chest rising and falling as I fought for air, when the door behind us opened again. Brent. He stepped in and paused. Took in the scene. Me bloodied, restrained. Celeste, calm, unbothered. His face didn't change. What's going on? He asked. I could barely get the words out. She cut my hair. I managed, voice hoarse. Then she ordered them to hold me, and she slapped me. 100 times. Ask them. Celeste didn't flinch. She hit me first, she said with a shrug. Besides, it's just hair. I stared at him, desperate for anything. A sliver of concern. An ounce of protection. Something. She beat me, Brent. You're really going to act like that's nothing? He walked over, knelt slightly, and gently wiped a smear of blood off my chin with his sleeve like I was a child with jelly on my face. I'll bring you to the hospital, he said softly. Don't worry about it. I pulled away. No. Don't bother. Layla. I said no. My voice didn't crack this time. I'll go alone. You don't care, so don't bother. I turned, stumbling as I pulled free from the guards. No one moved. No one tried to stop me. My face burned, my body ached, and the taste of blood still coated my tongue. I was halfway to the door when I heard his footsteps behind me. For a second I thought, maybe he'll follow me. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Then Celeste's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Brent, she whined, cradling her hand. My palm hurts. I think I bruised it. I slapped her too hard. I paused. My breath caught. Brent didn't even hesitate. I glanced over my shoulder in time to see him walking toward her. He took her hand gently, lifted it to his lips, and kissed the center of her palm. And I was again forgotten, so I just walked outside. I flagged a taxi with a shaky hand, the taste of blood still in my mouth. When I got in, the driver asked, Hospital? I shook my head. No, I croaked. Take me here instead. I gave him Myra's address. Myra opened the door less than 10 minutes later. She gasped. Layla? What the hell? What happened to your face? I didn't explain. I didn't have the strength. I dropped my bag inside the entryway and whispered, Can I stay? Just until my visa arrives. She didn't say a word. Just pulled me into a tight hug and let me cry against her shoulder. The next few days blurred. Ice packs pressed to my cheeks. Warm soup. Quiet rooms. The hum of the news playing softly in the background while I stared at the wall. I didn't check my phone. I didn't want to see more pictures of Brent and Celeste acting like everything was perfect. Like I hadn't bled on their polished floors. Then one day, a message buzzed in. Brent. Why aren't you at the hospital? I told you to go. Where are you? I stared at the text. The audacity. Like I was just a name on his to-do list. No anger. No apology. Just a reminder. I didn't reply. I blocked his number instead. That same afternoon, I zipped up my bag. Checked my passport. Then I headed to the airport. When the plane took off, I didn't look back. I was done breaking for people who only knew how to shatter me. And this time, I wouldn't be the one left behind. The descent into Zurich was a silent transition from the dark, heavy clouds of my past to a landscape of crisp, blinding white. Below, the Alps stretched out, like jagged teeth of ice and stone, indifferent to the trivial miseries of the people crawling beneath them. When the private jet finally taxied to a halt on the tarmac, I sat in my seat. For a long moment, my hand resting instinctively on my left side. The stitches beneath my silk blouse pulled slightly, a dull, throbbing reminder of the blade Celeste had driven into me. My face was still slightly tender, though the swelling from the 100 slaps had subsided into faint, yellowish bruises that I had carefully concealed with heavy foundation. The cabin door opened, and the sharp, freezing Swiss air rushed in. It was clean. It tasted of nothing but altitude and snow. At the bottom of the airstrip stairs stood Lucas. He hadn't changed. He was still wearing one of his ridiculously expensive, tailored overcoats, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his dark hair windblown. But the moment his eyes landed on me, on the oversized wool hat I wore to hide my butchered hair, on the slight, guarded way I held my torso, his posture went rigid. He didn't wait for me to reach the bottom. He strode up the steps, took my small carry-on bag from my hand, and looked straight into my eyes. "What happened to your face, Layla?" His voice was dangerously quiet, a low rumble that usually meant someone was about to lose their career, or their teeth. "I fell," I said, a dry, automatic lie. Lucas reached out, his thumb gently brushing the edge of my jaw where the makeup couldn't quite hide the discoloration. Then, without warning, he flicked the wool hat off my head. My jagged, unevenly chopped hair fell around my ears. It looked like the work of a manic child. Lucas froze. The air around him seemed to drop another 10 degrees. "Who did this?" "It doesn't matter anymore, Lucas. I'm home." My voice cracked slightly, the exhaustion of the 11-hour flight finally catching up to me. "Please, just take me home." He stared at me, his jaw clenching so hard I could hear the joint pop. For a second, I thought he was going to demand names, demand I get back on the plane to California to point fingers. But then, seeing the raw fatigue in my eyes, his expression softened into something resembling pity, a look I usually hated, but right now I welcomed. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder, careful not to press too hard against my left side, and guided me down to the waiting Bentley. "We're going to the villa in Montreux," Lucas said as the car pulled away from the private terminal. "Mother and father are in Singapore for a summit, so it's just us. You're going to sleep. And tomorrow we are going to fix everything." The drive was quiet. I watched the Lake Geneva shoreline flicker past the tinted windows. For 3 years I had lived in a minimalist, sterile mansion in Los Angeles, surrounded by glass walls that made me feel like an exhibit in a museum. Brent's house had never felt like a home. It was a physical manifestation of his mind, cold, organized, and entirely devoid of warmth. The Vane family villa in Montreux, by contrast, was an old-world sanctuary. Built in the late 19th century, it was filled with dark wood, heavy tapestries, and the scent of pine and beeswax. When we arrived, Lucas led me straight to my old bedroom. It was exactly as I had left it 4 years ago, before I ran off to America chasing a shadow. My favorite books were still on the shelves. The velvet drapes were drawn to keep out the chill. "Get some rest," Lucas said, pausing at the doorway. "The estate lawyers have already been notified. Your paperwork is being processed. By next week you won't be a Westwood anymore." "Thank you, Lucas." He hesitated, his fingers tightening on the doorknob. "I warned you about him, Layla. But I won't say I told you so. You've paid enough of a price." He closed the door, and the silence of the room wrapped around me like a shroud. I lay down on the feather mattress, fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't have to listen for the sound of a car pulling into a driveway. I didn't have to wonder if my husband was sleeping in the study, or if he was looking at a photograph of his stepsister in a locked room. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, I slept without dreaming. The next morning, Lucas brought a team to the villa. There was no trip to a public salon. Instead, a renowned French stylist named Mark arrived with 3 assistants, several trunks of equipment, and a quiet, respectful demeanor. "Madame Vane," Mark said, bowing slightly. He used my maiden name without a second thought, likely briefed by Lucas. He looked at my hair, his fingers gently lifting the uneven chunks Celeste had hacked away. He didn't gasp or make a dramatic scene. "A bold canvas. We can do something very modern, very strong. Just make me look like myself again," I murmured. "Or someone else. Just not this." For 2 hours, the only sound in the room was the snip of silver scissors and the soft murmur of Mark instructing his assistants. When he finally turned the chair toward the mirror, I stared at the woman looking back. The long, soft curls I had carefully maintained because Brent once casually mentioned he liked traditional women were gone. In their place was a sharp, asymmetrical bob that grazed my jawline. It was sleek, dark, and framed my face in a way that made my cheekbones look higher, my eyes larger and colder. The bruises on my jaw were still visible, but the haircut didn't hide them. It made them look like war paint. Magnifique, Mark whispered. A woman who has decided to stop hiding. After they left, Lucas walked into the room, followed by an older man in a charcoal suit carrying a thick leather briefcase. This is Monsieur Gerard, Lucas said, the head of our family's legal division. Gerard bowed. Good morning, Mademoiselle Vane. I have the preliminary divorce filings prepared. Since you signed a prenuptial agreement drafted by the Westwood legal team, the division of assets is relatively straightforward. Kept everything separate to protect their estate. In this case, it works to our advantage. We do not need to negotiate. We simply file, serve him, and wait for the court's signature. What about the police report I filed in Los Angeles? I asked, my voice steady. The stabbing at the bar. The assault at the house. Gerard adjusted his glasses. The Westwood family has significant influence in California, and they have already attempted to classify the bar incident as an unfortunate accident involving an intoxicated relative. However, we have secured the CCTV footage from the beach bar through our own channels. We also have the medical reports from your admission. As for the incident at the mansion, the 2 bodyguards who held you have been identified. They are private contractors with enough financial incentive and the threat of federal prosecution. They will testify that Celeste Westwood ordered the assault and that Brent Westwood witnessed the aftermath and failed to intervene. I don't want his money, I said. I just want him to sign the papers. And I want Celeste to face the consequences of what she did. Understood, Gerard said. We will initiate the filings tomorrow. The papers will be served to Mr. Westwood at his primary office in Los Angeles. Make sure he gets them personally, Lucas added, a cold smile touching his lips. I want him to know exactly who is pulling the plug on his perfect little world. In Los Angeles, the Westwood mansion in Bel Air was exceptionally quiet. Brent walked through the front doors at 8 p.m., his briefcase in hand. The house was dark. Usually, by this time, the scent of roast chicken, garlic pasta, or fresh pastries would have drifted from the kitchen. The hallway table would have a small bowl of fresh keys, and his dry cleaning would be hung precisely in the coat closet. Tonight, there was nothing. The air was cold, the thermostat set to an energy-saving 70 degrees. Layla, he called out, his voice echoing off the high marble walls. No response. He frowned, walking into the kitchen. The stainless steel counters were spotless but empty. A single sticky note sat on the island. It was from the housekeeper, Maria. Mrs. Westwood said she was taking a trip. She told me to take the week off. Brent crumbled the note and tossed it into the stainless steel bin. Tantrums, he muttered to himself. He walked up the stairs to the master bedroom. It was the room he rarely entered, preferring the solitude of his study or the guest wing. But tonight he felt a strange, nagging irritation. He opened the door. The room was perfectly neat, but when he opened the closet, he noticed several empty hangers. Her jewelry box, usually sitting on the dresser, was gone. Her favorite perfume, the one she had stopped wearing because he never commented on it, was missing from the vanity. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting a text from her, asking if he had found his suit, or if he wanted her to come home. It was a text from Celeste. Brent, I'm at the studio. Can you come pick me up? The driver is being slow and I don't want to wait. Also, I saw a gorgeous vintage Chanel bag online. Brent rubbed his temples. Not now, Celeste, he murmured, typing back. Have the driver bring you. I have work. He sat down on the edge of the bed. It felt incredibly large, empty, and cold. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone again, dialing Layla's number. The number you have dialed is not in service or has been blocked. He stared at the screen. Blocked? Layla had never blocked him. In 3 years, she had been a constant, predictable presence. No matter how cold he was, no matter how many times he ignored her texts or pushed her away, she was always there within 3 rings. She was the one who made sure his life ran like a clockwork machine while he focused on expanding the Westwood empire. A sudden memory flashed in his mind, the look on her face when he had kissed Celeste's hand after the confrontation in the hallway. She beat me, Brent. You're really going to act like that's nothing? At the time, he had deemed it minor. Women's drama. Celeste was emotional, high-strung, and fragile. Layla was always the stable one, the one who could handle things. He had assumed she would go to the hospital, get patched up, and Return in a few days once her temper cooled. But looking at the empty closet, a cold sensation began to settle in his chest. He dialed his assistant, secretary, and even the family lawyer. Find out where Layla is, he commanded. Check her credit card statements. See where she went. Sir, his secretary replied after a few minutes. Mrs. Westwood's primary credit cards, the ones linked to your account, haven't been used since she left the hospital, and her personal bank account was closed 3 days ago. The funds were wired to an offshore account in Switzerland. Switzerland? Brent's hand tightened on the phone. Why Switzerland? We don't know, sir. But there's more. The Los Angeles Police Department just contacted our legal team. They are moving forward with the assault investigation regarding Miss Celeste. They say they have new evidence in a high-profile legal firm representing Mrs. Westwood. What firm? Vane and Partners, based in Geneva. Brent's breath hitched. Vane. He remembered the night he met Layla. Her brother Lucas Vane had introduced her. At the time, Brent had known the Vanes were a wealthy European family with some real estate holdings, but he had never paid much attention to them. The Westwoods were the kings of California real estate. They didn't need to worry about foreign old money, or so he had thought. Get the car, Brent said, his voice tightening. I'm going to the office. The next morning, the Westwood headquarters in downtown Los Angeles was buzzing with its usual corporate energy. Brent sat in his glass-walled corner office, reviewing a multi-million-dollar land acquisition in Silicon Valley. But his mind kept drifting. Every time his office door opened, he expected to see his secretary bringing in a thermos of the specific herbal tea Layla used to brew for him when his throat was dry. Instead, he got lukewarm Starbucks. At 11 a.m., the heavy oak doors of his suite opened without a knock. 2 men in dark, perfectly fitted charcoal suits walked in. Behind them, Brent's secretary was flustered, holding a clipboard. Mr. Westwood, I tried to tell them you were in a meeting. It's fine, Sarah, Brent said, his voice cold as he stood up. Who are you? The lead man, a tall Swiss attorney with a razor-thin mustache, stepped forward and placed a thick, blue-bound folder on Brent's mahogany desk. Mr. Brent Westwood, the attorney said, his English flawless but accented. My name is DuPoint. I am representing Mademoiselle Layla Vane. You have been formally served. Brent didn't look at the papers. Served with what? Divorce papers, DuPoint said calmly, and a formal notice of asset separation. Furthermore, we have filed a civil suit against your stepsister, Celeste Westwood, for grievous bodily harm, and a secondary suit against you for complicity and obstruction of justice. Brent's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Layla is my wife. This is a domestic dispute. We can resolve this privately. Mademoiselle Vane has no intention of resolving anything privately with you. DuPoint replied, his voice dry. The criminal case regarding the stabbing has already been elevated to the district attorney's office. Your influence in this city is considerable, Mr. Westwood, but the Vane family's resources are global. I suggest you retain excellent counsel. You are going to need it. The lawyers turned and walked out, leaving the office in a stunned, heavy silence. Brent picked up the blue folder. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped to the signature page. There, in elegant, precise handwriting, was her signature, Layla Vane. She hadn't even used his last name. For the first time in his life, Brent felt a crack in his armor. He looked at the paperwork, then at the empty space on his desk where her framed photo used to sit. He had taken it down a year ago because Celeste complained it was distracting. He picked up his phone and called his head of security. Get me a flight to Geneva tonight. The Vane estate in Montreux was bustling with preparation. The annual winter gala at the Grand Hotel du Lac is next week, Lucas said, tossing a heavy, gold-embossed invitation onto the library table where I was reading. The entire European elite will be there. Investors, politicians, old money. And guess who just RSVP'd? I didn't look up from my book. Who? Brent Westwood. My fingers tightened on the edge of the page. Why would he come here? He hates Europe. He thinks anything outside of North America is a waste of capital. He's desperate, Layla, Lucas said, leaning against the table with a cold smirk. Our legal team has frozen his European assets. We've also made sure his major logistics partners in Rotterdam and Hamburg are suddenly reviewing their contracts with Westwood Logistics. He's realizing that the quiet, submissive girl he treated like a doormat has a family that can crush his supply chains with a single phone call. I closed the book slowly. And Celeste? She's terrified. The LA district attorney has refused to drop the charges. Brent's lawyers tried to post a massive bail, but we argued she's a flight risk. She's currently under house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor in her Bel Air mansion. No more private jets. No more luxury shopping. A small, quiet sense of justice flared in my chest. It wasn't a wild, explosive feeling, just a cold, clean satisfaction. I want to go to the gala, I said. Lucas looked at me, his eyes searching my face. Are you sure? He'll be there. He'll try to talk to you, try to drag you back. He still thinks you're the same girl who would sleep on the floor of his study just to be near him. I stood up and walked to the tall glass window overlooking the lake. My reflection showed a woman with a sharp, elegant haircut, eyes that no longer held the desperate hunger for a man's approval, and a posture that was straight and proud. Let him try, I said. I want him to see what he threw away. The night of the gala arrived. The Grand Hotel du Lac was a palace of light, reflecting off the dark, still waters of Lake Geneva. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of black ties, diamonds, and the soft clink of crystal champagne flutes. I arrived with Lucas. I wore a backless emerald silk gown designed by an Italian house. The cut was simple but striking, showing off the clean lines of my shoulders and the subtle, elegant curve of my neck. The short, dark bob of my hair was styled into a sleek, wet look that made me look dangerous, like a siren from the cold depths of the lake. The moment we walked down the grand staircase, the whispers began. Is that Layla Vane? I thought she married some American developer. She's back. And look at her. She looks stunning. I heard the marriage was a disaster. The brother is furious. I ignored them all, keeping my chin high, a polite, distant smile on my lips. I took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and stood beside Lucas as he conversed with a Swiss minister. Then the crowd near the entrance parted slightly. Brent walked in. He was dressed in a classic black tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, his expression as stiff and remote as ever. But there was something different about him tonight. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were prominent, and he kept looking around the room, ignoring the prominent figures who tried to greet him. Then his eyes found me. I watched as his body went completely rigid. He stared at my short hair, at the backless gown that revealed the faint, silver scar on my side. A scar I chose not to hide with makeup, and at the sheer, calm indifference in my eyes. He didn't hesitate. He began walking toward me, his strides long and urgent. Lucas stepped forward to block him, but I placed a hand on my brother's arm. It's fine, Lucas. Let him. Brent stopped 3 feet away from me. His chest was rising and falling, slightly, as if he had just run a marathon. Layla, he said, his voice raw. Mr. Westwood. I replied, my tone as polite and cool as the ice in my champagne. He winced at the name. We need to talk. Privately. Please. We have nothing to discuss that cannot be handled by Monsieur Gerard, I said. Layla, look at you. Brent reached out, his hand trembling as if he wanted to touch my short hair, but he pulled it back when Lucas glared at him. Your hair. Why did you do that? And your side, the scar. Your stepsister did both of those things, Brent, I said, my voice quiet but clear enough for the people nearby to hear. The hair was for her school project. The scar was from her kitchen knife. Surely you remember? You were there for both. A few nearby guests gasped softly, murmuring to each other. Brent's face went pale. She was sick. She wasn't herself. I've sent her to a clinic, Layla. She's getting help. I've punished her. A clinic? I let out a soft, amused laugh. A private, luxury retreat where she can drink organic smoothies while awaiting her trial? That's not punishment, Brent. That's a vacation. But don't worry. The American courts will have a different definition of rehabilitation. I don't care about her anymore. Brent burst out, his voice cracking, drawing more eyes. He took a step closer, desperation bleeding through his cold facade. I don't care about Celeste. I didn't realize how much I needed you until the house went cold. Until I woke up and there was no one there. I didn't know how much you did for me. You didn't need me, Brent, I said, looking him dead in the eye. You needed a servant. You needed a housekeeper who was stupid enough to love you. You wanted the warmth of a wife without ever having to give any of yourself in return. That's not true, he whispered, his eyes reddening. I married you. I chose you. You married me because I was convenient, I said. Because you knew I was obsessed with you, and you thought I would never leave. You thought you could keep your sick, emotional affair with your stepsister in the locked west wing, and keep me in the master bedroom like a piece of furniture. Layla. The divorce papers are on your desk, Brent, I said, taking a sip of my champagne. Sign them. It's the only decent thing you have left to do. I turned my back on him, walking deeper into the ballroom with Lucas. Behind us, Brent stood entirely alone in the center of the crowd, the whispers of the European elite washing over him like a cold, rising tide. 2 weeks after the gala, the final hearing for Celeste Westwood's criminal trial was held in Los Angeles. Because of the high-profile nature of the case and the relentless pressure from the vain legal team, the media was out in full force. I didn't attend in person. I sat in the library of the Montreux Villa, watching the live stream on my laptop. The screen showed Celeste sitting at the defense table. She looked unrecognizable. The bright, smug, designer-clad girl was gone. She wore a simple, dark gray suit, her hair unwashed and pulled back into a messy bun. She was crying, her shoulders shaking as her lawyer tried to argue for a suspended sentence based on mental instability. The prosecution was ruthless. They played the CCTV footage from the beach bar. The video was clear. Celeste lunging at me with the knife, the look of pure, unadulterated malice on her face. They also introduced the testimony of the two private bodyguards, who admitted under oath that they had held me down while Celeste assaulted me, and that Brent Westwood had arrived shortly after and dismissed them without reporting the incident to the police or seeking medical aid for me. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, did not look impressed by the defense's tears. This is not a case of a young woman making a mistake under the influence, the judge said, her voice echoing through the courtroom. This was a calculated, violent assault driven by personal malice. The victim nearly lost her life, and the attempt by the defendant's family to cover up the incident is a grave offense against the justice system. The verdict was read. Celeste Westwood, guilty of assault with a deadly weapon and conspiracy to commit domestic abuse. Sentenced to 4 years in a state penitentiary with no option for early parole. I watched as Celeste screamed, throwing herself toward Brent, who was sitting in the front row of the gallery. Brent, help me. You promised you'd fix this. You promised. The bailiffs quickly restrained her, pulling her out through the side door as she shrieked and kicked. Brent didn't move. He sat in the gallery, his head in his hands, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who had finally realized that his wealth, his name, and his cold, calculating mind couldn't save him from the ruin he had built with his own hands. The stream ended. I closed the laptop. The room was quiet. The sun was setting over the lake, casting long purple shadows across the floor. I felt a light knock on the door. Lucas walked in carrying a single sealed white envelope. It's over, he said, handing it to me. Brent's lawyers sent this over an hour ago. He signed the papers. No contests. No demands. It's completely finished. I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was the final divorce decree, stamped by the court, with his signature at the bottom. Beside his name, there was a small, smudged fingerprint, as if he had touched the paper with wet hands. Are you okay? Lucas asked softly. I looked at the paper, then out at the calm, vast waters of Lake Geneva. The phantom pain in my side was gone. The burning on my cheeks was nothing but a memory. I'm more than okay, I said, a genuine, warm smile finally breaking across my face. I'm free. 6 months later. The summer in Switzerland was beautiful. The cold, white snow had melted into lush green valleys, and the lake was a brilliant, sparkling blue. I sat at an outdoor cafe in Geneva, sipping an espresso. I wore a simple white linen dress, my short hair now styled into a chic, effortless pixie cut that caught the warm breeze. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from my university. My application to the master's program in art history had been accepted. I was going to start in the fall. Is this seat taken? I looked up. A man was standing there, holding a sketchbook and a cup of coffee. He had warm, hazel eyes, a kind smile, and none of the cold, statuesque perfection that had once drawn me to Brent. He looked human, real. It's free, I said, smiling. He sat down, introducing himself as Julian, an architect working on the restoration of the Old Town Cathedral. We started talking, not about real estate, not about money, and not about the toxic dramas of high society. We talked about art, about the lake, and about the simple beauty of a summer afternoon. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to pretend. I didn't need to wear silk lingerie in a specific color, or cook elaborate meals hoping for a crumb of attention. I was just myself, and that was more than enough. Across the ocean, in a cold, empty mansion in Bel Air, a man sat alone in a dark study, holding a cheap tin keychain with Zurich written across it, the only thing his wife had left behind. He would spend his life in that empty house, surrounded by the ruins of his obsession, realizing too late that the only woman who had ever truly loved him was gone forever. But I wasn't looking back. I took a sip of my coffee, laughed at something Julian said, and looked forward to the rest of my life.